Yeah, I'll react to that, sure.
Free to skip to the time. Hello. Feel free to skip to the time on screen if you want to get straight to the point, but please do bear in mind when
We're not
commenting that
skipping.
there may be something you've missed in the introduction if you do skip. I'm not formally qualified to talk about linguistics, but I've been doing it on this channel for a number of years.
Changing
I've
contrast.
collaborated with a few people more qualified than myself.
You gotta just wait a second. Just let me go back 10 seconds. So that I can make this... It's bright enough. It's not greatest quality, but okay. Starting from the beginning.
Hello. Feel free to skip to the time on screen if you want to get straight to the point, but please do bear in mind when commenting that there may be something you've missed in the introduction if you do skip.
We're not skipping.
I'm not formally qualified to talk about linguistics, but I've been doing it on this channel for a number of years, and I've collaborated with a few people more qualified than myself, so I've ended up with a misplaced sense that I am qualified. But of course I'm not formally qualified, so if you notice anything that you think is a mistake, by all means put it in the comments and I'll try to address those things.
Great attitude.
Now, there's a long-standing misconception that posh, upper-class, southeastern British English...
Guys, before we get into it, I just want to say that I know this is from his thumbnail and from his title. I think his thumbnail says more of what I'm interested in than the title, but he says, an upper-class Southern British accent, 1673 to 2023. His thumbnail is what really caught my eye. Did British people once sound American? And so that's, regardless, I'm interested. I love learning about language and how accents and languages as a whole develop over time. But the problem, I've heard that before many times, that present day 21st century American English may sound more similar to how late 18th century, maybe early 19th century English might have sounded like. The reason I'm hesitant is that I think that gives a false impression that American English accents and just American English have not evolved quite much, as in pretty much saying that I think none of us are saying that the American English accent of today is perfectly similar to the time of the American Revolution. But I'm wondering the reason why he believes, or people believe, that the 21st century British English, Southern English accent has become more different from its early 19th century version than American English has. That is my question that I hope to learn here, but I'm interested regardless, so let's go.
There's a long-standing misconception that posh, upper-class, southeastern British English was somehow invented in the 1700s or 1800s to differentiate it from working class English, or to differentiate it from American English, or there are various different explanations people have, and this isn't true. There are certain aspects of upper class or academic or formal speech that do seem to have been cultivated, or people do seem to have tried to push things that weren't naturally there in the language, but the pronunciation system does just seem to be a regional accent that developed naturally in the way that all regional accents do. It just happens to be the one that's gained high prestige in the southeast of England and in England in general. So in this video I wanted to trace the sort of or one iteration of the posh southeastern British accent back through the ages, using the phonetic descriptions that we have from past times. One question I always get when I do videos like this is, how could we possibly know what they sounded like before they were audio recordings? And I'll probably do a fuller video on that at some point, just to link people to.
Fair.
But the long and short of it is that the way accents sound is a direct product of the way that people move their muscles, their vocal muscles, when they're speaking. That's, when you change what you're doing with your tongue and lips, you change the shape of your vocal tract. And as you change the shape, the resonant frequencies change. So as you blow air through it, different sounds come out. And that is why people have different accents.
Also, I think that can be said as to why there are different languages. But I get his point.
No. Because they're doing different things with their muscles. when they speak. So if you can describe exactly what somebody's doing with their muscles when they speak, you can come out with a you know, in theory, a perfect idea of what their accent sounds like impressionistically. And before audio recording, there was a fairly long-standing tradition of grammarians and phoneticians describing their own pronunciation in a mechanical way, in a way that's surprisingly modern in a lot of cases. And this starts to happen around the mid-1500s, and it continues obviously to the present day, because there are still phoneticians writing phonetic descriptions of English. So we can know in a lot more detail than you'd think. And of course, upper class accents are the ones that are most likely to be described by phoneticians, because a lot of people back then were very snobbish and had very prescriptive views about this is how you should speak, and you should avoid speaking like a working class person. So these are...
I don't care about any of that. I'm interested in the reasoning behind it, sure, but I'm the whole 99.100% of my interest in this, what we're talking about, is how it naturally changes over time, not, you know, the small reasons of why, or like wanting to sound. There's nothing, in my opinion, this is straying a little bit away from what the thing is, but I'll try and be brief, is that I do not care about your proving to me your grasp of the language you're speaking, the English language. I care about you conveying a message as quickly and as accurately as possible. And as soon as you strafe towards picking certain phrases or terms to make you sound smarter, is when that's useless to me. If you are trying to pick a word that does sound smarter but more accurately depicts your meaning you're trying to convey to me in a quicker way, I am so okay with that. As soon as you cross into trying to act smarter at the expense of being more clear, quicker, that's where I have an issue.
Because a lot of people back then were very snobbish and had very prescriptive views about this is how you should speak, and you should avoid speaking like a working class person. So these are the accents that we actually have the most information about. I don't doubt that I'll still get a load of comments like this from people who haven't watched the introduction, but that's impossible to avoid, I think. But anyway, I'm going to go in with a few little reconstructions that I've made myself about, you know, and sort of just go into a little bit of discussion about each one, although hopefully not too long, so that it's not too drawn out. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a good Christmas, or whatever you're celebrating or not celebrating at the moment.
Thank you.
Hello. I thought I'd better come out and thank you all.
Oh, I was not ready for this.
I hope you have a good Christmas, or whatever you're celebrating or not celebrating at the moment.
Hello. I thought I'd better come out and thank you all for coming here to celebrate Christmas with me and my family today. I know some of you have come from the length of the country, some of you have even come from overseas, to stand outside our front door and shout while we celebrate our family Christmas. So I just wanted to say thank you very, very much for coming all this way, and I hope your travels haven't been in vain and that you've enjoyed yourselves. Thank you.
Holy crap.
I'd seriously recommend Dr. Jeff Lindsay's video on this, but this modern...
It is Jeff, not Geoff, and I'm an idiot. I love his videos as well, but damn, that was good.
I'd seriously recommend Dr. Jeff Lindsay's video on this, but this modern posh accent, the kind that Prince William and Prince Harry have, is a really very modern development. It has a lot of features that weren't very common 70 or 80 years ago. The tongue position is low for the vowel in words like thank. It's thank, rather than the older thank.
Thank. Thank. Thank. So I naturally say thank. It's kind of an in-between thank, or thank cat, thank. Obviously, I'm American. He's not describing here, okay? I am nowhere near as educated in this stuff as him, but I'll still try and give my attempts, okay? Sorry in advance. Or, yes.
The word here has a... The tongue position is low for the vowel in words like thank. It's thank, rather than the older thank. The word here has a long vowel where the tongue position doesn't move while it's being pronounced.
Yeah.
Here, rather than here.
Here.
Possibly as a result of American influence, this accent has a lot more tapping of the t sound if it comes between a stressed and an unstressed vowel. Better rather than better.
Better.
What if we jump back 50 years to 1973?
So having to say
I've always
bet,
been aware.
like to really pronounce the t, you have to really make an effort with the tongue at the roof of the mouth. Bet. But bet, saying bet. I'm not really sure if the tongue kind of barely touches the top, but there's no impact. Bet. So.
1973.
I have always been aware that there's a certain responsibility that comes with the job I have as a film director. And I think, although every year since 1957 I've directed a Christmas film, I think on this occasion, because there was so much backlash last year, I think on this occasion I will hand over the baton, as it were, to my close friend John Wilkinson, who I know will engage with working class issues in a way I wasn't able to last year. And I'm certain that I will return at some stage with a much improved ability to engage with those issues.
Guys, I was immediately impressed and like for sure knew what he meant with his Prince William impression, because Prince William is a voice where I currently I know how he speaks. I can hear it right now in my head. But his Prince Charles back in it was a 73. Yeah, I had to base it more of my how I recognize his current 2023. I haven't heard a video of him talking in 2024. It's only the 4th. Tomorrow's my brother's birthday. Remember that. But I could start to hear parts of how he speaks in today. But that's why I had a much bigger reaction to his William speech.
Ability to engage with those issues.
We think of this as being the same kind of accent as the last one, but in reality it's actually very different on a phonetic level. That cat vowel has a higher tongue position. Cat rather.
I didn't know we were comparing. I'm being an idiot. They were very different in my opinion.
Being the same kind of accent as the last one, but in reality it's actually very different on a phonetic level. That cat vowel has a higher tongue position. Cat rather than cat.
Cat.
The vowel in words like I starts with a slightly more fronted tongue position. I rather than I.
I.
The vowel in words like occasion starts with a higher tongue position. Occasion rather than occasion. And words like...
So it's obviously it's a much more lazy approach, and what I see as an American. Occasion, it sounds like much more work than just occasion, you know? Occasion. I feel like maybe if you're natively used to occasion, then maybe it's more effort to do occasion. But for me, I wonder if it's more of an upbringing used to, or just a fact that my way is just less effort, of why saying occasion, it just sounds easier. It almost sounds like I'm using less calories in saying occasion than occasion. My question is that feeling due to just my familiarity with occasion, and I don't normally do occasion, that's the answer.
Where?
I love videos like this. I know I'm not well informed, but that's kind of the reason why I'm so interested.
And words like aware end with a slight off glide to the vowel.
Aware.
Aware rather than aware.
Neither.
Is there such a big change if we jump back 50 years to 1923, still well within the era of audio recording?
A number of my opponents have suggested undoing a lot of the work that we've done so far. And I would say the very idea appalls me. because it would mean disrespecting an enormous amount of work by people who have dedicated their lives, or the better part of their lives, to this cause.
If you listen carefully, it's a fairly dramatic change all over again, miles and miles away from the 2020s one. The I vowel now has a really fronted tongue position, something like I. If a r sound appears between a stressed and unstressed vowel, it can be tapped. Very rather than very.
Very, very, very. So very, very, very.
Stressed and unstressed vowel, it can be tapped. Very rather than very.
Very. I do not care how stupid I sound. I'm trying to do my
A
best.
stressed and unstressed vowel, it can be tapped. Very
Very,
rather than very.
very. That sounds so freaking obnoxiously fancy. Posh, is that the word? Very. I feel like I'm like a king is talking
Between
down.
a stressed and unstressed vowel, it can be tapped. Very
Very, very inappropriate.
rather than very.
Very.
The goose vowel has a very backed tongue position, oo, rather than the more recent oo.
Ooh, ooh.
The so vowel has a bit more of a fronted onset, so rather than so.
So.
By now, the kit and dress vowels have very tense high tongue positions, I, rather than the modern I, eh. Jumping back 50 more years takes us to the very limit of audio recording, 1873. Although audio recording was in its absolute infancy at this point, having been invented in the late 1850s, we have plenty of speakers who were alive in the 1870s and got recorded when they were older.
That was actually a few decades earlier than I would have thought.
In the 1920s and 30s, alive in the 1870s and got recorded when they were older, in the 1920s and 30s. So I'd say that this is the last stage where we can rely on audio recording alone.
As I know many of you are aware, I have recently lost my house due to a change in circumstance. As I know many of you are aware, I have recently lost my house due to a change in circumstance. As you can imagine, this is far from the way that I would have wanted to spend my Christmas, and I implore you to reinstate me into my previous way of living. If you do, I can assure you I will conduct myself in a rather better way than I had done up to this point.
Maybe
You see what's strange is that this one and the 1873 one sounded so much more understandable to me and normal to me, normal relative, than the early 1900s one. It's as if they started trying to make themselves more different. This one sounded to me
A rather better
so much less stressed on a different it like this
way.
I can understand. You could play this. We can play this twice as fast.
Wanted to spend my Christmas, and as you can imagine, many of you are
older, in the 1920s and 30s. So I'd say that this is the last stage where we can rely on audio recording alone.
As I know many of you are aware, I have recently lost my house due to a change in circumstance. As you can imagine, this is far from the way that I would have wanted to spend my Christmas, and I implore you to reinstate me into my previous way of living.
He sounds so much more here in a way that's to me, in a way that I might say. And it's funny how they, between 73 and 50, they seem to become more like wanting to sound, or just like,
If you do,
it makes sense though.
I can assure you,
I guess that's the whole
Vowel words like
point.
goat and no now starts with a
I had done up to this point.
Sorry, wash my
Incidentally,
hands.
she said loss in vowel. Maybe not quite such a big jump, but a jump nonetheless. The vowel in words like goat and no now starts with a fairly back tongue position, more similar to how Americans say it nowadays. Oh, rather than oh. You can
Oh,
hear this in recordings of people like George
No.
V. Some words like lost take a long vowel, lost. Even someone as recent as Queen
Lost.
Elizabeth II retained this in some words. She pronounced often as orphan, but incidentally she said lost rather than lost. The starting point of the house vowel is very backed. Haus. While it might be tempting to put this down to German influence, and it could be, it equally may just have been the way the vowel would have gone anyway. People who know a lot about history but not very much about historical linguistics often have a bias towards thinking that sound changes are obviously a result of foreign influence because of historical events that coincided with them, such
Well, I think a more constant change of sound and language is just slang.
as obviously a result of foreign influence because of historical events that coincided with them, such as a lot of the Victorian royal family being bilingual English and German speakers. But really, sound changes would happen anyway, and unless there's a very particular systemic reason to think they're a result of foreign influence, you don't really need that to explain them. In this recording, there's also less of the tapping, very, and more of a labiodental approximant, very. Maybe not quite so much, I should have put it in.
That sounded exactly the same.
In this recording, there's also less of the tapping, very, and more of a labiodental approximant, very.
It almost sounds like you're incorporating a slight L sound in the R of very in the first iteration.
Very,
Very,
and more of a labiodental approximant, very.
very, very, very.
Maybe not quite so much, I should have put it in more, to be honest.
You're doing great, man.
Pronunciation, which still exists in some dialects today and is also considered a speech impediment where it occurs in dialects that don't usually have it, was considered an upper class feature in the late 1800s, as reflected in Punch cartoons that show posh people substituting W for R. Given that modern speakers very often misinterpret the labiodental R,
So that's since turned to like a offensive way to imitate Japanese or East Asian ways of talking English. But it used to be a posh British way of saying it.
given that modern speakers very often misinterpret the labiodental R pronunciation as W, and given that saying very is much more common than saying very, and also given that labiodental realizations of R were common in the 20th century among posh people, it's likely that this is what the Punch cartoons were getting at. Now it's time to go beyond the era of audio recording.
Over here, I would say, since I've been alive, and now I would say the more emphasis on each sound, the more educated you appear, more educated you sound. So me being born in New England, where the classic kind of English accent where you, I guess people say uneducated accent, as in an accent that you did not change from, an accent that shows that you did not talk with or interact with people from other parts of the country. New England would be not using the R with car, with park, pak, ka, pak, yaka. What else? So yeah, I guess here it's just park, car, star. Just, I'm not saying that you have to do the old English, Middle English, knife for like knife, but just where it is modern day pronunciations of letters and pronunciations of syllables, letters in words and sentences, out of breath. Then the more educated you sound. I hope that makes sense.
To 1823.
3 travellers approached the entrance of Canterbury as journeying from Dover in the afternoon of a summer's day, when they found their advance opposed by an immense concourse of people. The crowd was so great that they could not go forward but with extreme difficulty.
On a phonetic level, this isn't a huge jump. It's pretty much in line with all the other jumps so far. Although you might be fooled into
I'd say
thinking
smaller.
it's a big jump because this is an accent that doesn't exist within living memory and therefore doesn't have any existing social connotations anymore.
Interesting, because I'm sure with an English listener that sentence might apply
Doesn't
correctly.
exist within living memory.
But with me, it sounded more English, which is obviously a big point, especially considering his thumbnail, that
And
he's doing a very good job. Maybe a good job isn't needed. Maybe the facts speak for themselves, but the more he says kind of goes away intuitively from an English speaker, goes closer intuitively to an American speaker. Very well done.
therefore doesn't have any existing social connotations anymore. The previous accents we've heard all exist in audio recordings of upper class people, and so we strongly cluster them together as upper class accents. And although this one isn't...
Can I just turn my hat around? Thank you.
So we strongly cluster them together as upper class accents. And although this one isn't that different to the others phonetically, because there are no audio recordings of it, our brains don't put it in the same box and it sounds a bit weird. In this clip, the onset of the price vowel has reverted all the way back to a back tongue position, similar to what it now has in the 2020s.
I'm going back.
Weird. In this clip, the onset of the price vowel has reverted all the way back to a back tongue position, similar to what it now has in the 2020s. I rather than I. Roger Lass in 1999 put together some of the evidence for this, describing two different patterns of pronunciation that seemed to go in and out of fashion throughout the 17 and early 1800s. Some people said price and mouth, and this became more dominant towards the era of audio recording. But more popular among phoneticians in the late 1700s and early 1800s was the system in this clip, with two back vowels, price, mouth. In Thomas Batchelor's analysis from 1809, he says that the word bite is pronounced like the word but with a y in there.
Boit.
Bite. And pound is pronounced like pond, but with a w sound.
Pound.
Even Alexander Ellis, who was born as late as 1814 and is known for being a very good dialect phonetician later in life, makes the same comparison, that the first element of the bite vowel is the same as the but vowel. One other thing I've done is pronounce the ing suffix of journeying like in, journeying.
Guys, I want to sub it here because I don't want to take, react to all of his content without really even being sure if I'm creating any, if I'm giving any context or input of my own here. So if this gets any views, I'd be happy, but if it gets more interest than I think it would, I will continue. So I love you all. Hope you're all doing well. Would appreciate any comments, any answers, any questions I had, any comments at all. And would love for you to like and subscribe. Again, the link to this original video, top of the description from Simon Roper. Yeah, hopefully see you guys next time. Bye.